Why is shunning the world a popular Christian theme? The world or secular society can't be saved because of the zeitgeist that comes together from all the individual ID egos within the generations of any peoples. The ID ego, becoming the gateway to death and sin. The base and prime of the ID ego that all people have as physical needs and selfish desires within the masses, always trumps the long-term health of the whole, especially the spiritual priorities. The birth and death rates always ensures a forgetful and destabilized civilization that is hardwired with the ID ego to fall into the same temptations generation after generation. The logic of separation of religion and state from the religious scriptures is that the natural needs and sins of the people will always have a presence and eventually overtake and corrupt any true or honest government, fallen humanity. Because of their nature, are tempted to sell out and corrupt for immediate needs, competition, and survival. No society can be ruled without corrupting and turning into oppression until Jesus comes back at the second advent. We are to be separated from secular society because it's a major tenet of the religion. Before the separation of church and state, and before the Council of Nicaea in 325, Christianity required separation of church and state here. Leviticus 20 verse 26, 2 Corinthians 6 verse 17, Romans 12 verse 2, John 2 verses 15 to 17. Because of the nature of the physical world, no mass of people will easily pursue the Christian way of self-denial and the mortification of the flesh. The Christian religion is not a mechanism to rule a people in its true essence. What you get is a minority living like Amish or a lay monastic structure, mostly agrarian, like a community of dirt farmers. In that way, the world can't be saved or redeemed until the second advent, 1 John 5 verse 19. The devil controls the world through our fallen nature. Through the ID ego in the masses that resets and repeats each generation, calibrating humanity towards being self-destructive to the whole each generation. Each generation is like a reset with a few notes from what ancestors could leave behind that they have no experience to understand. It's because of our nature and the condition of the fallen world that nothing can be redeemed without God through Jesus removing the curse of death from creation, except the lake of fire. Because of basic needs and other natural tendencies in mankind, having to do with practicality that have to be met in order for mass survival of a people. Technically, Christianity is meant to be only a small minority of people who shun secular society entirely by denying their base humanity in order to prepare for a future destruction and evolution into a resurrected existence like Eden. Classic Christianity is illegal to practice in most places in the world, and in the free world they make it unpractical. It's also illegal in the free world to live like a Native American did today in USA. In the same way Christianity is illegal and not practical and extremely suppressed today, with a false idea, a type of Antichrist that existed in many forms for the past 2K years, 1 John 2 verse 18. With the logic and understanding of divinity that is revealed as the true paradigm given in the Bible in order to fill everyone's superego with the Holy Spirit, the world is a layered prison of both flesh and spirit. And we're all condemned to live in individual-like cells without the ability to assemble and pursue the faith by action. We can only read and try and understand without doing what is commanded by entering into the formation described of semi-communal living. What there is instead is a type of antichrist with false beliefs, as sheep are being slaughtered in the aisles. Each altar call is like a scene of Revelation 12 when the dragon is waiting to devour the child the woman is about to give birth to. After thinking critically about it for over 30 years, it seems to me it's a little like being a full-blooded Native American, reading your ancestors' journals that articulate traditions, customs, and beliefs, and then walking into an Indian casino and seeing your tribe's name and various members speaking about how the old ways are reflected in the new ways. Tolstoy and other Christians labeled Christian anarchists are more like socialist Christians. True Christian anarchists are those who reject the belief that society can ever be redeemed and become a minority shunning anything secular in order to promote their beliefs. They, like I said, More like Amish or some traditional farming monastic communities can serve as time capsules for what might have been the normal mode of life somewhere at some point in the Holy Roman Empire for the entire community. The belief is that until the Second Advent, society can't be anything but evil and corrupted. Any help is pride in disguise, and we should exist as minorities and move if we become majorities, living off to the side as a minority not mixed at all with the state, or at least as possible. The separation of church and state comes from the Bible. Pure religion is described in the book of James and as not being corrupted by the world and helping orphans and widows. James 1 verse 27, 1 John 2 verse 15, Timothy 2-4. In all time periods since Christ, it very well may have always been like a prison for that paradigm, as a type of suppression in one form or another, since most of the time there was a majority worldly representative of a minority and non-worldly way, which restricts the secular-leaning majority figure as being worldly in the first place. The popular Psalm 23, read at many funerals, actually explains the fallen nature of creation on earth now as the shadow of death. The Philokalia and books that document the same historical cases of severe Christian asceticism left behind are the first manuals devoted to the practice of exorcism. These manuals would help train a monk to become a spiritual advisor, to help guide other monks along the path of severe asceticism and cast down any strongholds that might develop into demonic complexes and even demons. Known today as dangerous psychological manifestations of mental illnesses, often coupled and attached to physical illnesses or ailments and allergies. Looking a lot different based on the paradigm of culture back then and what their culture believed and the medicines and knowledge they had access to. In those communities, they didn't use an ointment if they were injured or care about dying. The physical world was a secondary and fallen reality, and the soul needed to be tamed, finishing with death and resurrection. Hebrews 9 verse 27. The shunning of the physical also seems to indicate how even these early monastic communities were plagued with Gnosticism that crept in like a leaven in bread, like Jesus warned about. Even in the Essene days, Nicolaitan hedonists, who deified the carnal nature and worldliness, existed the same as New Agers, who deify the carnal as a divine manifestation of God and worship the creature as pantheists. These types of modern-day Gnostics existed as majority since before the flood. Whether they deify or demonize the flesh, they still indulge in it as an act of worshiping what's supposed to be a separate dimension of creation, that which is reserved as holy and divine in creation. The blasphemy of those hedonistic philosophies and lifestyles are attractive to the young and naive, the worldly and the powerful-centered people. They justify themselves by deifying the fleshly desires of life as something divine. The etymology of what is holy is what is separated from humanity and its secular culture. Hedonism, a generational vulnerability that happens mostly to the young and strong, and is an abuse to society. It destabilizes as it stunts the growth of a people into slouch-like decay and tyranny. What a Falthist is a YouTube channel that teaches what he calls Massotopia. This definition explains God punishing Israel as a natural law that decomposes society due to laziness and decadent life. He explains it as a scientific or measurable natural phenomenon and cycle of every society and civilization. The powerful, like government and corporate rulers, are vulnerable especially. A little pride and a demonic entity could manifest psychologically. Sinful building blocks defined as passions in the East build into demonic complexes, which host demonic entities within individuals, but especially in institutions or masses of individuals. The ID ego is the prime desires of humanity are always checked by the superego, which is built by the society, parents, or ideals usually present in a culture. Christians use the Bible and try and mortify their carnal nature, which is mostly the ID ego. It's done by with their ego or will, which is affected by the Holy Spirit, which enters the superego via the scriptures. Zeitgeist and familiar spirits in the masses of social structure built as one anthropomorphized complex of corporate ultra-terrestrial beings. The names of the songs on the soundtrack I composed describe the cognitive logic I'm explaining here. Defining ultra-terrestrial life that is alive like fire, sharing a conscience of what fire, water, or what other elements want. The tide of humanity is culture built on social structures in that way. And that system is alive with ultra terrestrial spirit beings composed of virtues and passions, building into undiscovered complexes of life, like natural phenomena. How people with a common goal articulate different aspects of ultra terrestrial beings or zeitgeists. Anthropomorphizing culture's archetypes by using Eastern Christian mysticism symbols and modern-day psychological definitions. Using Freud and Jung. Synchronicity of culture and environment with the archetypes of the philosophy or theology outline a pareidolia, like map and paradigm within the context of reality. The outlines perceived as pareidolia become the features of ultra-terrestrial beings. An example is a life of decadence will come together to be answered with decay because of the ultra-terrestrial spirit. The Holy Spirit, or the body of God, is the life and breath of each creature. For spiritual beings, this is also true. This is the old way of thinking and psychology in the ancient world. The spirit and zeitgeist of any corporate mass is defined by the archetypes anthropomorphized, all woven together like an intricate tapestry with the theology of the religion that articulates the archetypes as anthropomorphized spirit beings. Only through a logical and sober way can we peer into the spiritual and noetic world described by the ancient world of thought that underwrites all created reality. Passions and virtues act like two shadows on an object in order to add depth to three-dimensional objects, by the spirit forming the character and personality around the will of the self or soul of creation. Acting a lot like the dark matter or energy in the night. When the physical world falls asleep and its eyes close, everything is turned inward. When we close our eyes, we fall asleep into the dream world. The light from the sun adjusts as we close our eyes, and hues of violet can be seen swirling around into forms in responding to our thoughts and subconscious, motivating them as we fall asleep and enter the dream world. When we sleep, our memories are being converted from short-term to long-term memory. The phenomenon can be explained as the automatic nervous system doing its thing during the sleep cycle, so that these shapes and forms eventually animate into a dream-like thread that holds all the information that needs to be processed into long-term memory. That data strand has more than the physical world in it. As the purple hues swirl and take form, other chemicals are released associated with falling asleep, so we don't remember each night. Unless you practice asceticism and stay up for a long time. The automatic function is how the shapes and forms seem to be inspired by more than immediate thoughts. It's all within the self, but inside the self is the eye or gateway to the noetic or spiritual world. Why is shunning the world a popular Christian theme?